Hi guys, and welcome back to another hands-on video by Mirror Lessons. My name is Heather, and today I'm going to be talking about the 90mm macro for the Sony full-frame E-mount system. Now, the first time we saw this lens was back at Photokina in 2014, and back then it was just a prototype. So as you can imagine, we were very excited to try it because I'm a big fan of macro. I love taking photos of butterflies, flowers, all sorts of things, anything tiny. So I was really curious to see how this lens would perform. First of all, let's talk about the build and design. So as you can see, it's quite a big lens. Right now I have it on the a6000, but you can also use it on any of the full frame cameras as well. It's actually been designed for the full frame system. It's also dust and moisture resistant, so if you go out in the rain, a few drops certainly won't harm the lens. The lens actually comes with this plastic lens hood, which makes it a lot bigger than it actually is, but it protects the lens, and that's what's important. As you can see, there are lots of external controls on the lens. You have the focus limiter switch, and there are 3 different options. There is the optical stabilization switch here, so you can turn it on and off. There's also a focus hold button, so you can lock your focus. Perhaps my favorite feature is the sliding focus ring on the front here. It's got a ribbed design, so it's really easy to hold and turn, and it slides back and forth, as you can see. And this switches it between autofocus and manual focus. Now, I find this really useful out in the field because when I'm dealing with moving subjects, such as butterflies or any sort of insect, it's useful to have autofocus. Whereas if I'm dealing with static subjects, it's better to have manual focus so I can make some really precise adjustments. So speaking of autofocus, I find that the autofocus mechanism on this lens is actually really fast, especially when you use it on a fast camera like the a6000. It's a little slower on the a7S and the a7R. We haven't had the chance to try it on the a7R Mark II, but I'm sure that on that camera it would also be really fast. I have found that the autofocus tends to be faster if you use a larger AF point. Usually the medium size is the best. If it's too small, sometimes it hunts back and forth, but once again, it depends on the camera. The a6000 I think is the best match if you're looking for really fast autofocus. The lens has a minimum focus distance of about 11 inches, which is about 28 centimeters. It has 1.1 magnification. You can fill your frame with something about the size of a coin, more or less this size, but anything smaller won't fill your frame, such as a ladybug or a very small flower. The image quality produced by this lens is actually dependent on the camera that you use, as you can imagine. If you use it on an a7R, as we did the other day, you can get some very sharp images because of the high resolution of that camera. If you use it on the a7S, you get less resolution, but it also means that you can use higher ISOs when you're out in the field, especially when you're doing macro photography. I actually prefer using it on the a7S because when you're out in the field and there isn't a lot of sunshine, you still have to use a very high shutter speed and a closed aperture to get in focus images. So as a result, you have to use high ISOs as well. With the a7S, you can easily use 3200 and get a beautiful image. The a7S also has the advantage of an electronic shutter, which is nice because it means you don't scare off insects and you don't have any shutter shock. The a7R tends to suffer from shutter shock between 1/100th and 1/200th of a second, but I'm sure that the a7 Mark II and the a7R Mark II with their 5-axis stabilization will actually work much better. So the sharpness of this lens is actually very good right throughout the range. It's already excellent at 2.8. I'd say the optimal sharpness is between 4 and 11. There is some very slight vignetting at around 2.8, but it's not a big deal, and it's something you can easily fix in Lightroom. There isn't any significant flare or chromatic aberration. 90mm is actually a really good focal length for portraits as well. And this lens, it has excellent out of focus rendering. It's got a beautiful bokeh. This is true even though its fastest aperture is only 2.8. So all in all, this is a very versatile lens. You can use it for all sorts of things. I actually even used it for a sports event yesterday. It wasn't the fastest for sports photography, but it just shows that you can use this lens for a number of different applications. So is this a lens that I would add to my collection? If I only owned a full-frame Sony camera or even the a6000, I would definitely consider it. It's got everything that a macro photographer needs. It's got all the external controls. It's very easy to use. Perhaps the only downside of this lens is the size and the weight. It's about 602 grams, which is about the same weight as the other offerings from Canon. And it's about the same size as well. So you aren't really gaining anything in terms of portability or compactness with this lens. That said, the quality is excellent, the design is wonderful, and it's the only macro lens available for the full frame system at this time. So that's it for this hands-on video by Mirror Lessons. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them on this YouTube video or go visit our dedicated article on mirrorlessons.com. And thank you for watching.